begin by wishing you well. And we indeed had no run-ins, I don't believe. It was always constructive, so hopefully today will be no different, and I'll try to remain constructive. Taoiseach, 100 years after the birth of the Irish Free State, I believe this chamber, which sits at the heart of our democracy, should be a forum in which members are free to discuss issues which are of grave concern to the people that we are here to represent. I would hope that we could do so in a sensitive but robust manner, and that our Parliament can avoid becoming a place where there are unspoken rules that discourage certain questions being asked, and where groupthink or complicity in silence becomes the order of the day. For an increasing number of people, one of the issues that is demanding of more serious and frank levels of open debate is that of immigration. The impact that this is having on housing, healthcare and education, and indeed the apparent dysfunctionality that surrounds our entire asylum application process. As policy issues, these must be treated like every other area, where a clear assessment of successes and failures can be discussed honestly. They cannot and must not be no-go areas in terms of our political discourse. Unfortunately, that is what appears to be happening. Every time my independent colleague in the Seanad, Senator Sharon Keoghan, tries to speak on these issues, she is shouted down. If I or my rural independent group colleagues try to raise concerns, we are accused, absurdly and ridiculously, of trying to tear apart the fabric of social cohesion. And yet, what we are saying is inevitably proven to be correct. Taoiseach, I, like many others, am deeply concerned about the pressure and the anger that is building up in communities relating to the way in which the state has chosen to house those seeking international protection. I am more alarmed that despite our obvious capacity deficits and the scale of emergency, hundreds of applicants were still in tented accommodation until just a few days ago, in freezing temperatures. We are at the tipping point of a real and profound social catastrophe. The rate of people entering the country from states and areas designated as safe by the EU is increasing by hundreds of percent in some cases. Our hotels are at maximum capacity here. Our emergency accommodation is beyond breaking point. Our own homeless numbers are breaking records, yet there seems to be no plan to press the pause button. Taoiseach, the key point here is that we need a sustainable solidarity. What we have at present is not sustainable. We need a system that is not burdened to the point of collapse, yet that is what we have. We have to adopt a new approach. We have to press pause. It is a painful but obvious truth that we must recognise. Do you agree? Thanks, Garvey.
First of all, I thank the Deputy for raising the issue, and I assure the Deputy that no issue should be excluded from this House in terms of debating and discussion. It's fundamental to our national Parliament that we would have open debate, free debate, and that the voice of the contrarian is always heard. I don't apply that to you in this context, but the voice of the contrarian should always be heard. Groupthink is always dangerous, and we shouldn't always follow the herd on any issue, be it economy, be it education, be it anything. So that's the first point I would make. Second point I would make is that Ireland, historically, and if we go back 100 years, and if we go back to 1916, beyond 100 years, one interesting key ingredient of our revolution was it was internationalist. It was not a narrow nationalism. It was internationalist from day one. The idea of Ireland taking its place among the nations of the world. Our membership of the League of Nations, of the United Nations, has been about an adherence to and loyalty to a multilateral rules-based order. And what stems from that then is we having obligations as members of the United Nations, as members of the European Union laterally. We're now members will be shortly celebrating 50 years of membership of the European Union. And that means when the international rules-based order is attacked, we can't stand alone as an island that's not impacted. The war in Ukraine is a war on the international rules-based order, be in no doubt about it. Putin does not want a thriving democracy on his doorstep. That is fundamentally what's at stake. Issues to do with geopolitical security, he has raised those. They can be dealt with and can be agreed, and members of the European Union, leaders of the European Union have said to President Putin, you know, we're open for discussions to resolve issues to do with the security architecture of Europe. But he is bombing, as we speak, innocent women and children and families. He's bombing energy infrastructure. He is deliberately, as part of a hybrid form of warfare, creating a migration crisis, creating an energy crisis, and creating a food crisis. Now, I don't think morally we should stand aside. 66,000 people have come into this country from Ukraine. It is a huge challenge, that I acknowledge. The vast majority of the Irish people have opened up and said, we will do what we can. This is a wartime situation. That's what we are facing. We can't allow Putin win by sowing the seeds of division amongst us because of the pressures and challenges that inevitably arise because of the migration flows. More globally, in terms of international protection, climate change, more conflict in places like Ethiopia, in Africa, Middle East, are all leading to increased migration, not just in Ireland, but across the world. That is a reality we're going to continue to have to deal with into the future. And I think we have to stand up for our responsibilities and do the best we can.
Taoiseach, I'm very aware of the horrors of war, as we all are from watching what's happening. But I did make the point in my speech that there are people coming in from areas that are designated as safe. And those cases are increasing all of the time. This needs to be properly monitored, and there needs to be a reasonable debate around this issue. We need a proper functioning immigration policy. And when I suggested to you that the pause button be pressed, is there any way that, you know, a meeting could be sought with representatives in the EU so that we have some sort of mechanism to pause what's happening here? Because people are being failed. If we're bringing in people, it's not giving them a céad míle fáilte if they're in tents or on hotel floors, as I've said previously. And it's not right that people who don't need protection are coming in and abusing our system and indeed our hospitality. That's not right. There's people coming in from safe areas. So it clearly proves that our immigration policy is failing because there isn't a proper functioning policy. And these issues need to be looked at, but there needs to be engagement with EU representatives because we have to press pause.
Well, first of all, there is a robust migration policy within the state. Yesterday we had a Cabinet subcommittee meeting involving all of the relevant government departments, which I chaired, and we do consistently monitor the situation in terms of those seeking asylum within the country. But when people come into the country to seek asylum, there is a process there then to deal with that. There is no choice but to deal with it once an application comes in. At the European Council meeting this week, although it wasn't initially on the agenda, I can assure you it will be on the agenda, the issue of migration, because other countries are raising it because of the general increase in migration across Europe more generally, apart altogether from the situation in Ukraine. In my mind, the fundamental way to address these issues is at source in terms of the societies from which people are seeking to leave. And questions need to be asked, why are they seeking to leave? Because of authoritarianism, because of conflict and war, and because of climate change as well, which is creating a migratory trail, given the ravages that are being imposed and that many areas are now experiencing because of drought and various other weather events that are creating real crises now in many communities across the world. It's a very challenging situation.
Thank you,
and we need to be honest with ourselves and with people more generally. It's not something that you can stop.
No.
It's not that simple at all.